What's up, fam? Welcome back to the Steep Stuff Podcast. I'm your host, James Lauriello, and today I'm so excited to bring you guys an episode with one of the legends of our sport, someone who I have deeply admired for many years, and one of the first people that I kind of found and stumbled upon when I first entered the sport and started watching things like Salomon TV and other outlets on YouTube. I want to introduce Rickey Gates. Rickey Gates is the conceptual runner. More of a mountain artist than he is maybe an athlete. He's just an interesting character. One of the most different people I've ever had on the podcast. Rickey is truly an authentic human and someone that is just different. So I really appreciated his time. It was so fun to have a conversation and just kind of catch up and see what he's been up to and where he's going now in life. He's working on a really amazing book right now that I don't want to give too much away in, so you have to learn more about it in the episode. We did talk about his Transamerica effort. We talked about Mount Marathon. We talked about some of his racing and if he would ever return to certain races, what types of races inspire him, and so much more. Like I said, this was a really special episode for me. They say never meet your heroes, but man, did Rickey deliver. Yeah, just an amazing human and someone I hope to have more conversations with in the future. So without further ado, none other than Mr. Rickey Gates.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live!
People, Earth, listen up. It is March, guys, and I am so excited that Ultimate Direction is finally unveiling their new vest lineup for 2025. Head on over to ultimatedirection.com to check out the new Race Vest 6-liter and Ultra Vest 12-liter. They're going to be coming at you in two beautiful aesthetic colors, the onyx and green, as well as the white and blue. Guys, I absolutely love these. I've been playing around in these products for months and months now. You might have seen Tara Warren last year running in both the Ultra and Race Vest as she absolutely smashed it in the Rocky Mountain Slam. Guys, this is a very durable, solid product that I absolutely love. Like I said, the color wheels are beautiful, and this is something I think you're going to be really looking at as you start to put together your race calendars. You're going to need some dependable gear for 2025. So this is definitely something to turn your head toward. Hop on ultimatedirection.com right now. Use code SteepStuffPod for 25% off your cart. Again, like I said, use code SteepStuffPod. Treat yourself to one of these. I think you guys are going to love them. I'd love to hear your feedback. Let me know what you think. Enjoy. Rickey Gates, welcome to the Steep Stuff Podcast. How you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on, James.
Yeah, man. I have to be honest with you. I was a little bit nervous for this one. I don't normally get nervous for conversations, but for those who don't know, like, dude, I'm a giant fan of yours. Like, I came into the sport maybe 5 years ago, and I was kind of grew up on this Salomon TV and all of these like YouTube shorts when I first got into the sport. And a lot of the episodes, like predominantly like the Mount Marathon and Transamerica, had you. So it's a little weird to be sitting in front of you and having a conversation. It's pretty cool. So definitely appreciate you taking the time out of your day to chat, man.
Well, thanks for saying, and I'm psyched to be here.
Yeah. So let's dive in. One of the things, the first question I probably had for you is related to your Instagram bio. You refer to yourself as a conceptual runner. Maybe kind of break that down for me and like what you mean by that conceptual runner. Like, how do you define that?
So a friend of mine, an artist, lifelong artist, I know him because my wife went to school, to art school out in Rhode Island. And with dating her and then marrying her, I accumulated a lot of artist friends, and I've had a lot of conversations with him over the years, and and just kind of like what it is that I'm doing, obviously what it is that he's doing. And he was the first one that kind of started to get me to think about the runs that I do as artwork, as opposed to, just like this physical challenge. And he's the one that coined that term for me, which I really appreciated, and I liked it in my bio. It feels a bit more comprehensive than athlete, or racer or runner. It's for me, it's a way of expressing that this form of movement that I do is meant to get at something more than just one foot after the other, and meant to more than just to push myself. It's about figuring out bigger questions that we have about life and our place here.
I mean, in 2 words, I think it's a beautiful description for all of these things. So it's pretty cool. I appreciate the breakdown. To get to the audience, for those who, I would be very surprised if anyone doesn't know who you are. But just to give me a little brief synopsis, just a little 5-minute breakdown on your background, and we'll kind of go from there, on how you got into the sport, where you grew up, things like that.
Yeah, so got into the sport. I'm from Aspen, Colorado. A lot of people know about the town. It's famous for skiing and jet setting. Grateful to my parents for making that decision, to raise a family there, despite the not having $1 million in our bank account ever, and just an immense amount of opportunities that I grew up with, living in that town. So very first running race was when I was in like 7th or 8th grade. I ran a 5K tethered to 4 other friends. We wore backpacks and a climbing rope between us. We were doing it kind of as a fundraiser for the Aspen Alpine Club, which was a youth club that we were a part of and kept me busy during the summer times. Same friends. 1 year later, most of them were on the cross country team. I was on the soccer team, and they just said, "Hey, it doesn't look like you're having a lot of fun on soccer, and on the soccer team. And by the way, you're not very good at it. Come over to the cross country team." And that's when I joined the cross country team freshman year in high school. So then kind of a typical few years with that, really enjoyed it. Super lucky to have a coach that moved to Aspen in part because he loved the trails there. And so we got out on the trails at least twice a week, but sometimes like 3 or 4 days a week, as part of our training. And then he would have, meetups through the summertime, and we'd go run some of the most iconic trails in the Aspen area. So that's kind of what got me interested in trail running, was high school and having a couple coaches that were equally as psyched about it. Went on to college, did 1 year at Lewis and Clark College, in Portland, Oregon, small private school. Decided I wasn't ready for school yet, took 2 years off, traveled, went to CU Boulder after that, tried to make the cross country team for 3 consecutive years. They had, and I would assume still have, a race at the beginning of the season, kind of a time trial and if you ran that race and performed well, you'd get a walk-on spot on the team. And for 3 consecutive years, I came up, 20 to 30 seconds short on making that team. So my college running career was just the freshman year at Lewis and Clark College. And then kind of at the end of those 3 years of not making the team, I had this fitness. I wanted to do something with that fitness, even though I wasn't going to be on the cross country team that fall. And so I signed up for the Imogene Pass Run in southern Colorado, in the San Juan, 17-mile point-to-point from Ouray to Telluride, goes up and over Imogene Pass, 13,000 feet. And to my delight and surprise, I won the race. If there's kind of like a few things in one's lifetime where they can kind of point to and say, like, that specific thing changed my life, without question, winning that race opened a lot of doors for me. I met Buzz Burrell at that race. He's the one that told me about the U.S. mountain running team, and told me I should go out to Mount Washington the following spring and try and make that team, which I did. I went out and came in third place at the Mount Washington race. So now we're going back to, like, I don't know if this is like 2005. It seems about, yeah, so 20 years ago. Geez. So I made the U.S. mountain running team, and we went to Turkey that year. And I just started learning more and more about kind of the international mountain running scene, and learned that there were all these races in Europe, and kind of shorter races out there, uphill. They're not the most glamorous races. They're not UTMB, nothing like that. But I did learn that you could win, 100 to a few €100 at each of these races, and they'd oftentimes put you up in a hostel or a hotel if you were a foreigner and they wanted you on the starting line. So I went over to Europe for the next 3 years, for 3 to 6 months, just trying to find a race every single weekend. And for me, it was like, I wasn't making a ton of money, but I was at least breaking even. And my flight over to Europe was paid for from, being on the US mountain running team. And it was just a super cool way to travel around. Sorry, this is a little long-winded.
No,
take fun. Yeah, it's kind of fun for me to go, like, why am I here right now? So we're going to continue down this thread. So it was during that time that I got picked up by the Salomon team. Adam Chase in Boulder, Colorado. He got put in charge of the team. He was a friend of mine and asked if I wanted to join it. And so that was, for the first year or two, it was a few pairs of free shoes a year. And then they started the international team, and Adam asked if I wanted to go over to France and be a part of that. And just looking back on that, the very first international team was like me and Killian Jornet and Ryan. I think Ryan Sands was there, and just like kind of a lot of these, like, what are becoming like old school guys in the sport. And we were all just in our mid-20s, and this team that was putting, frankly, at the time, a lot of capital behind an international team. And so that being on that team just opened up a lot of doors. It was really wonderful. I raced all over the world with them. And then one of the biggest things that ended up happening with them is my relationship with what was originally the African attachment and then became the Wandering Fever, but primarily Dean Leslie, videographer, filmmaker out of South Africa. And he got brought onto the team to make, he pitched some really cool video ideas, the YouTube shorts that you're kind of referring to. And he pitched some ideas to the guy that was in charge of the team, and they started funding a lot of these storytelling projects of his, and he and I got along really well, and I had a lot of ideas. I loved traveling. I loved kind of like this this dive into the history of the sport in a lot of different places around the world. So like in the UK, in the Fells, I loved the running scene there. Going over to Japan and meeting the marathon monks there. Mount Marathon, one that you had mentioned, just this race that has at this point 100 years of history behind it. It just, you bring together a brilliant videographer and some curiosity about the sport, and you can make some really cool stuff. So that relationship lasted for quite a while, and it kind of finished with telling both Salomon and Dean, I want to do this huge project. I want to run across the country. Can we make something out of it? And both sides, all three sides agreed that we could. And then following that, kind of trying to tell another story, the running every street in San Francisco, which to me at the time was, totally within my reach. I had just run across the country. And so this was like, one quarter the length of that. And so it was pretty reasonable. And so we told that story. And so yeah, that's kind of where I am today. I left the Salomon team after 13 or 14 years, about a year and a half ago, and joined the John G running team. And that's been a great relationship. For those that don't know, kind of a younger company based out of Boston. They're about 10 years old, make running apparel, but also put their efforts behind storytelling and things that aren't specifically race-based as well, like speed and performance-based, but more about what kind of stories and what kind of different people are out there. So that's 25 years, almost 30 years of running in a nutshell. Here I am today. I'm 43 years old. I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I've got a wife and two kids, and I don't run every day. I run a few days a week. I have my every single street project that I do here, and I guide many running trips throughout the year, which is a fun way for me to bring people into the sport or interact with people that are already in the sport in a different way that's not focused around racing. And I'm working on a new project right now, which is super exciting, called the 50 Classic Trails of America. And I'd love to talk more about that after I catch my breath right now.
Rickey, thank you so much for that synopsis and breakdown. There's so much. I mean, we'll keep this to an hour or so, but like I could literally sit here and talk to you for 4 hours just because I have so many questions. So we'll talk about the 50 classic trails. I do want to dive into that. One of the things, just starting from the beginning, I want to get into is I had asked a few friends before this conversation, what is it? Because, I don't know if you know, but you are so widely respected in this sport. Everybody looks up to you and really respects you. So I asked a couple friends before. I was like, is there anything you want to know about Rickey Gates? Like, what would you want to know? And I got so many questions about what was it like in those early years of joining the Salomon team? Like, was it life-changing for you? Like, did you at any point think in a million years, like, I could make a career out of this? Like, this was something I could go do to go race around the world and kind of follow and pursue this? I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I think more so just the nitty-gritty and more of the specifics around what those early years were like on the Salomon team and how that grew in front of your eyes.
Yeah, I mean, I think with few exceptions during the past 20 years, have I woken up and been like, yeah, I just can't believe I'm doing this for a living. Like, yeah, in short, I never thought I'd still be doing this. I never thought that I would be doing it at all. I was never the fastest person on the running team, not in high school, clearly not in college. I wasn't the fastest person on the Salomon team. I had a few lucky breaks in there, like I won the Mount Washington race. I won a couple races in Europe over 3 years. But I don't think any of my records stand. Yeah, I'm not going down in history as any sort of speed demon or anything. So to be able to at any point during that time be able to make a living out of it has just been the biggest blessing. And being on the Salomon team, within those, yeah, with quite a few amazing people, Killian, obviously, and to be able to race him, not just count him as a teammate, but to be in some similar races with him and to actually be pushing each other and to pull ahead of him at times. I'm like, this is freaking rad. Like, life doesn't get better than this. That's not what I dream about right now, but in my late 20s, early 30s, that it was just awesome. Francois, Courtney, The list goes on of these just amazing people that I've gotten to spend time with and call genuine friends. And even after, Killian's gone his own way and I've gone my way, and, to still have these people in my phone and call them up and have conversations and, as friends and not as teammates, not as competitors is really wonderful. So yeah, the early years in the Salomon team were super cool. It just felt like, they just really saw the potential of the sport early on, and I hand it to them. They put a lot of money behind and effort behind growing the sport. Whatever years you want to call that, 2008 to 2018, a solid decade there. Um, and I was just super psyched to be a part of it and have my plane tickets paid for and go to New Zealand and Japan and go to all these amazing places uh, and to be a part of it.
That's amazing. To piggyback off that, are you surprised by how much the sport has grown in the amount of time that you've been in it?
Yeah, I yeah, I'm not that surprised, to be honest. I guess so. Like I said, I grew up in Aspen, Colorado, and it's a town that's changed a lot in my lifetime. And that's another thing. I'm using this as um, yeah, comparison. People always ask like, "Oh, it's such a shame what's happened to Aspen, what it's become." But like even at a young age, I saw the trajectory that town was heading, and I knew that it was going to change. It was going to continue to change. It's been on the same trajectory, literally since they discovered silver, back in the late 1800s. And so kind of seeing with the sport, I feel like the sport has been on the same trajectory for a long time. And so I got to say, I'm not that surprised to see where it's at right now. Um, I am, I guess, surprised to, yeah, there's still some surprises there, like that I don't know. I mean, I look at the winners from some of these big races and to not know most of the names there. Um, and I don't think it's because I'm not doing my research. I think it's because there's so many fast people now that it's hard to keep up with like who's running insanely fast right now. So yeah, I guess I'm not too surprised. I'm psyched to see how it's changing. I think I discussed with my friends 10 years ago, like when people with legit speed uh figure out how to run mountains, that's when, everything's going to get really fast. I just consider myself lucky, I that I got into the sport when I did, because I've got some okay times in my repertoire, like low 15s in the 5K, but low 15s is pedestrian pace compared to low 14s and upper 13s, which is what we're seeing in 5K times for athletes coming into mountain running now. And so yeah, it was only a matter of time. It's a matter of like, the sexiness of the sport and money. If people can make money doing it, the reason I was able to make money doing it for so long is because I know how to live extremely frugally. And for a few of those years, I was living in a cabin, an off-grid cabin on the backside of Flagstaff Mountain in Boulder, Colorado, paying $125 a month rent. Other years there, I was living in my van, paying $0 rent. And I was extremely happy during those times. But people want to be able to, pay actual rent and sleep in a real bed. And I think that's actually happening now with the sport. So, yeah.
It's amazing.
Different players. Yeah, more money coming in, a lot more speed. Not that surprised at all.
It's astonishing, just like the growth, both from the ultra running perspective and sub ultra. Like these sub ultra races, I raced a handful of the Cirque Series races last summer, and I was astonished by some of these athletes. Like, in a good amount of them, like you said, sub 14-minute 5K guys. It's like
Yeah.
so many of them coming into the sport. So, yeah, it is crazy to see the trajectory it's headed on. I get mixed. I have like some mixed emotions with it, just because I love the competition and I love how fast it's getting. I just wonder what the exponential growth looks like from a dilution perspective. Like, it's like a more UTMB, or what do these races look like? Like, how does it shape up to look in the next few years? Which is, we'll see what happens there, but it's interesting. I do want to circle back to a time of your life and your relationship with Mount Marathon. There was a good handful of years where you went and raced Mount Marathon or somewhere in that range. And I love that race. I can't wait to go race it this year. Super excited to go out and kind of cover it and cover that area in Seward. Can you talk about just like what it was like going out there and racing Killian, racing just a studly group of athletes as well, and just like your relationship with that race in general over the years?
Yeah, it's a pretty easy answer when people ask me what my favorite race is. And it's hands down, it's Mount Marathon. Mount Marathon changed what I thought racing can and should be. And that it gets the respect that I think a lot of short races should have. The race is under an hour. It's something that captures people's attention from beginning to end, whether you're watching it on YouTube, on Twitter, whatever it's called now, or watching it if you're really lucky to be watching it in person. And 45 minutes, it's like you can feel the adrenaline, you get goosebumps whether you're doing the race or not. It is super exciting. I first knew about the race. My mom, we had a framed article with a photo in it of my mom doing the race in 1969. It was her second summer up in Alaska. She'd gone up there the first summer, made decent money for, a traveling hippie, working the canneries for 6 weeks during the salmon run. And so she was up there for a second summer in a row. The salmon hadn't started running yet. She was on the Kenai Peninsula, and she just started asking around, like, what can I do until the salmon come in? It was looking like it was going to be a week or two. And they're like, go run this race in Seward. So 1969, the race was already at that point over 50 years old, close to 60 years old. Certainly a test for the local athletes. Not as many women, but there were women doing the race back then. And my mom showed up, and they not only did she do the race, but she was fed from the local restaurants for the entire week beforehand, just because they appreciated, an outsider coming in and actually training on the course. And if you can imagine, like, my mom's not a runner, and her training for Mount Marathon was to go up and down Mount Marathon every day for the 5 or 6 days before the race. And so she was like perhaps a little bit fit for the race, but also I would imagine really sore and tired as well. But she came in second out of 2 women. The newspaper ran an article just kind of going over the winners of the race, and they found her story particularly interesting, that she had hitchhiked from Long Island, New York, all the way up to Alaska, and was doing the race and did pretty well. And so we had that article hanging on our wall growing up in just outside of Aspen, Colorado, and so I've known about the race my entire life. I started talking as I was doing these short races. I never considered myself like an up and down runner. Like my forte was running up the mountain and catching the tram down, which, like, to be honest, there's a lot of races like that. And it's great. You don't destroy yourself. It's not like dangerous. You can run 2 races in a weekend and be totally fine. But I just started getting, more interested in running up and down mountains, and so like kind of all signs were pointing towards this race up in Alaska that no Europeans had heard about, most Americans hadn't heard about. I knew about because of my own personal story, because of my mom's story. And then a completely separate story. I'd ridden my motorcycle from Colorado down to Argentina when I was in my early 20s. And I wanted to ride my motorcycle all the way up to Alaska and complete the two continents. And signs just pointed to running Mount Marathon that year. I had, so when I got there, I'd been on the road for like 4 weeks on my motorcycle, doing training as I could along the way, staying fit, and ran the race. I forget what year that was now, 2012 or 13 was my first time doing the race. Didn't know anybody on the starting line. I was the only guy on the starting line wearing a shirt, and ended up just having and still excelled immensely at going up that mountain. And I think me and Eric Strabel, we chopped, I don't know, a minute off of the ascent time back then for going up that mountain. And then just trying to keep up with him on the downhill just wasn't going to happen. He took off from me, but got to the finish line, and he had broken the record by, I don't know, 30 seconds, and I was about 10 seconds behind him. So I had gone under the old record as well. And it was just super exciting, like to be at that finish line, and surrounded by those mountains right on the ocean, and to have made, like, it's never happened in my life before where I've made that many close friends in 1 hour. I mean, literally, he came up to me after the race, Eric Strabel. He said, "Rickey, I'm getting married next year. I'd love it if you came to my wedding." I'm like, all right, I'll be here. I think he knew it was a way to get me back up to the race and do it again. And so yeah, that's kind of the start of the race, and for me in a nutshell. So finished second that first year, not as well the second year. On the Salomon team, going back to Europe, chatting with Killian, chatting with some of the other teammates there. Like, this is a legit race. And because I knew Killian, he'd been to some races in the States, Speed Goat being one of them, Pikes Peak. Like, he was just like disappointed with not the competition, but like just disappointed with the course. Like, he didn't consider them real mountain races. When you go switchbacking up a trail like this, you're going with a man-made invention, this trail going up the mountain. It didn't feel like a real dance between, the athlete and the mountain. It felt like a dance between the athlete and the trail that happens to go up a mountain. And so I told him about this race, and he was genuinely psyched about it, he and Emily. And so I managed to convince them to come out, and to convince Salomon to put some capital behind making a short film about it. And that's the Mount Marathon film that a lot of people have seen on YouTube. And then that race again was super exciting. It was me, Killian, and Jim Shine cruising to the top of the mountain. And like, I knew that if I had any chance at all at beating Killian, that it was going to be on the uphill. And like, honestly, I don't have a chance of beating Killian on the uphill either, but I did manage to get to the top of the mountain before him that day. And then he managed to put an entire minute on me from the top of the mountain back to the finish line. But again, I think we both dipped under the record. And his record's since been broken at least once by David Norris, and perhaps someone else. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's the coolest race. It just makes a person think about a mountain completely differently. It's an open course. You can choose any route that you want. It's legit dangerous coming down that mountain. I mean, it's hard for me to even really fathom 3,000 vertical feet in 10 minutes is the descent time for the winners of that race.
So crazy.
It's exciting. It gives me adrenaline right now just thinking about it. But it just helped me reimagine what running can and should be, at least for myself.
Would you say that's your favorite race in the country, or is that your favorite race in general? Like,
No, yeah, hands down, favorite
yeah,
race in the world for me.
yeah,
Yeah,
I love
there's
that.
nothing that compares to it. Like, and yeah, I appreciate like how Alaskan it is. I mean, it's really wild. I think there's less lawyers in Alaska than there are elsewhere. Um, and my good friend Matthias Sari is the race director for it now. So I'm constantly learning, who's going this year and what he thinks of who's going this year. And so yeah, it's a cool race. It's just yeah, it feels like a home away from home for me.
Do you think you'll ever go back?
Yeah, I'll go back. Yeah. I'm not sure. Like even with 2 second place finishes, like I had no regrets with that race. Like I've never regretted not winning the race. I was always so psyched to have a spot on the stage and to be able to perform there. Yeah, like I said, it feels like a home away from home for me. And I'd love to be able to. My mom was there one year, I think, for the race, and she watched it. And then, yeah, I'd love to be able to show my wife and kids the race. Maybe they'll do the junior race one of these years. So yeah, we'll see. One of these years, I'll head back.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm so excited. I'm going to go out for probably Mount Marathon this year. And I think we might travel around and just explore and probably stay to do, definitely stay to do Cirque Series Alyaska, which is another like very inspiring course. This course looks amazing. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, they've done a great job with that. And yeah, on like if I were to come up, if you were to make me, put down 10 of my favorite races in the United States, I'd say probably like 7 of them are in Alaska.
Yeah.
Like they just, yeah, they have inspiring terrain. It's still pretty old school up there. I really think that they get away with things that you can't get away with elsewhere. There's a race, the Matanuska Peak Challenge, which I've done twice. Let's see if I can do the stats. It's like 12 miles with 9,000 feet of climbing.
Wow.
It's essentially 3 Mount Marathons back to back. You go up one mountain, down the backside, and then up Matanuska Peak, and that's your turnaround. You're 6 miles in, and then down, and then back up and down. And it feels like racing up and down some of the really gnarly 14ers in Colorado. So yeah, it's just proper mountain running in a way that most people don't really understand.
It's interesting. I mean, there was I think his name was it David Kennedy. I think his last name's David Kennedy. David Kennedy's a Boulder guy, young Boulder kid. He might be like 20 something years old, like very young 20s. I think he's a PhD student at UC Boulder or just graduated somewhere in that range, but he lives in Boulder. He went and won that this year. I was really impressed. Like, I'm really not Alaskan to go win that race. I was like, wow,
that he might be the only one. I'll have to, I hadn't heard about that, but yeah, that's impressive.
I think he got himself. I think now if you win, you get an entry. I believe he got an entry into Mount Marathon, if I remember correctly. Okay. So I think that's what he's racing for. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you a little bit about what it's like to race with Kilian or race against Kilian. Just because, like, to the average person listening to this, like, people idolize Kilian. They don't think of him almost as like a human. They think of he becomes like the superhero, right? And what is that like? Not just being friends with Kilian, but like racing against him, being a competitor against him. I know it's probably a difficult question to answer. It's just that for the average person listening to this, I think they would take a lot away from understanding that in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't totally understand it myself. I've raced him. I've beat him on a technicality. By finishing 4 minutes behind him, but he was cutting all the switchbacks on the speed goat course, so he got disqualified. Sorry about that. Um, and like I said, I was ahead of him at the top of Mount Marathon, but that's not where the race ended. It ended at the bottom. And then a couple of years ago, I paced Francois through the night for Hard Rock 100, and Killian took off, um, with about 12 miles left to go, and yeah, there was nothing Francois could have possibly have done to stick with him. Um, Killian's one of the nicest people that I know. Um, he's just generous with his time, with his words. Uh, but I there's a part of him that is just like such a fierce competitor. So for those that don't know, he won Hard Rock a couple years ago, broke the course record. Francois Dan from France came in second. The two of them had run like, I don't know, 88 miles of the race together. Um, and when Killian took off with 12 miles to go, it was before the final aid station. And it was clear that that was like the fighter in him. It was like, and that came about because Francois beat Killian in UTMB. I don't know what it was, 1 or 2 years earlier, and Killian needed to get even. It was very clear to me at the time. I'm like, oh wow, like that was the price that Francois had to pay 2 years later, was like Killian just like not like, yeah, here we go. And yeah, his final split in Hard Rock a couple years ago is just insane. So, and then there's other stories like, he didn't know how to slackline. This is like 8, 10 years ago. He was in Boulder, Colorado. Scott Jurek and his partner, his wife, Jenny Jurek, they'd set up a slackline, and Killian just kept falling off and like just kind of became obsessed with it because there was a lot of people around him that were getting it and he wasn't getting it. And it was like clear that he was like needed to perform, to do well. And so, yeah, there's a drive in him that I just don't think can really be learned or faked. And I've been grateful for my years with him as a teammate, as a friend, and as a competitor. I've never deluded myself into thinking that I could match his performances. I don't have the interest or in maintaining my diet like that, in maintaining my training like that, in being that focused as he is on doing the things that he does. So yeah, that's him in a nutshell. Yeah.
Interesting. It's so interesting to me because, like, and you're not, you understand this, like the way people view you guys, is like these, especially, people of your class, if you will, these Ryan Sands, the Killians, you, like these larger than life figures, and everyone wants to know, especially the new class of people coming up. Like everybody's curious. It's like, what was it like back then, and what were these people like? And Killian's obviously still around now, just as you are. So is Ryan Sands. But it's like it's just a different time and how things go from there. I'm very curious because you've had so many lives in the sport. You've ran across the country. You've competed at the highest level in the sub ultra races. You competed in Europe, and now you seem to be on a different path. Like, what is your relationship like with competition?
I still enjoy it. I just, yeah, it was in 2017, 2018. I competed at that point for 15 solid years. It wasn't, it wasn't always enjoyable for me. Yeah, the focus needed in order to do well. I think both the sport was getting faster and I felt like maybe I was getting left behind a little bit, or, to be able to do my storytelling stuff and do the competition. It was hard to marry those two. And so that's when I just kind of left the competition. I never retired. I never said I'm leaving this forever. I never had a chip on my shoulder about it. but it was clear to me that that wasn't going to be my focus anymore. Um, Today I still compete. But I just take it a lot more gently. I'm a lot more kind to myself. It's hard when your identity, your paycheck, um, so many things are attached to where you finish in a race. And I still think that it's still kind of true that like this isn't a first, second, third place sport. This is a win or lose sport. And I lost a lot of times, and it was like this is really freaking hard to like just keep like doing this constantly, and yeah, and not be on the top of the podium all the time, if almost really never. And so for me personally, I needed to step away from that for a little bit and kind of re-explore what was really exciting to me about the sport. Um, and I feel like I still kind of deal with that, not necessarily for myself, but with others, with my guided running trips, um, convincing people that uh, to turn your watch off during these trips, to not be so focused on uh, on on the effort that you're putting in, but just being present out there, because that's the greatest gift of all with this sport, is to be able to explore places further, faster, get deep into the wilderness, and still come out that same day. Um, so yeah, let's see. I did a 5K here in Santa Fe on Thanksgiving. Came in third place last year, and this year coming up, I'm doing a donkey race where you tie, a ride and you're running with a donkey, a burro, and that's like 7 or 8 miles. And then yeah, I still run quite a bit, and we'll see. I've the longer efforts to me, like it's more important for me to run on terrain that speaks to me, and not necessarily one terrain that has a start and finish line. Um, I yeah, without trying to say anything negative about any of my friends' races that are on ski resorts. Like it just, I know I know how hard it is to get a permit to put together a race, and that ski resorts is where it has to kind of happen. But like for me, it's the least inspiring mountainous terrain in the world, is being on a man-groomed surface where half the trees are cut down. You're usually running up a road. If you're lucky, you're running on off-road or on a trail on that mountain. You're surrounded by industrial, um, like it's not industrial waste, but like this industrial complex.
Piping and
To
stuff like that.
me,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the lift poles and trash left over from the ski. Like, yeah, sorry, it sounds a bit negative how I think about those races, but to me, it's like I've only got so many efforts in me in a day, in a year, in a week, in my lifetime. Is that where I'm want to spend that effort, or am I going to go into what I consider to be more proper wilderness and do my effort out there? I've got a wife and 2 kids. Like my time is precious, and so where am I going to spend that time? Where am I going to spend that energy? And there's much more inspiring terrain to me out there. So that's my racing in a nutshell, like where I am with it now. Um, yeah, and
No, I think it's a beautiful answer. I
yeah.
do want to get into Hut Run Hut and some of the guided trips that you do, because I know you have one coming up. I think it's in May, correct? That's going to be in New Mexico, right?
Yeah, I got my guiding permit here in Santa Fe a few years ago, and I've been putting together a trip called Santa Fe Fast Pack, um, a trip that's kind of geared towards getting people either camping for the first time or returning to camping. I think it's a really great thing that gear has come so far in the past 10, 20 years. that you can get away with a 15-pound backpack in the backcountry. And I think that ultra running has opened a lot of people's eyes to what they think is possible for themselves in terms of terrain covered in a day. I love a 1 day run, and going back home for the night. But I also really, really love watching the sunset and going to sleep out in the wilderness and waking up and doing it again the next day. And my run across the country, although it wasn't always comfortable, just showed me that like it can be. You can make a few adjustments and have a super light pack and cover like immense terrain day after day. And with food, you don't have to get freeze dried food. You can get a lot of food just from Trader Joe's or even from the gas station, and be out there for a long time and just more, as Killian says, more miles, more fun.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I don't want to pivot too hard because I do have across the country questions I want to ask you too, and I'm going to link the video on YouTube in the show notes so people can go watch it. I do want to dive into some of these because I think we're in a similar place in the world right now than we were when you decided to run across the country. And I want to dive into a little bit like what you learned, kind of takeaways from that. Obviously you don't have to repeat everything from the video because we'll link that, but just a little bit of a synopsis of some of the bright points and some of the things you learned, beautiful interactions and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, I think there's the world's full of beautiful and wonderful people. We live in a different time right now than we ever have before. Media is such a central part of our existence, whether it be Instagram or Fox News or the New York Times or NPR. We just have more access to information right now than we ever have before. And I think it makes people feel more divided than unified. And I think that's a really powerful tool that can be used to increase other people's power. So I'm glad that I went across the country at 2017. And right now I'm actively consuming less media than I have in years. I'm not immensely saddened by too much that's happening right now. It like definitely not a direction that I would personally choose. But I just think that we just don't know what the future holds for us. I'm trying to tiptoe here.
Yeah, it's fine.
That's kind of where I'm at right now. I think that if people are losing faith, if people are losing faith, get out on foot and start talking to strangers, and hold your judgments back and start listening to people. It was immensely helpful for myself, and I think it can be helpful for everybody, really.
That's where I was going with it. I think we're a lot more similar than we are different. And I think just talking to a neighbor and just having conversation and getting outside, I think makes a huge difference. And like I said, I'll link the video in the show notes because I think I sent it to my mom and I sent it to my wife before this when I was doing research for the episode. And man, that's probably the fourth or fifth time I watched that video, and every time I was just blown away by it. So yeah, it's powerful, and I would invite anyone to challenge anyone to go watch it. So let's talk 50 Classic Trails, because I know it's a book you're working on. Is that correct right now for the 50 Classic Trails?
Yeah, so it was an idea. It was a project that I've came up with years ago. I'd say at this point, maybe even 10 years ago, started talking about it. There's a book called The 50 Classic Climbs of North America. came out in the 1970s, and some just like legendary mountaineering routes around North America, a couple of which have never been repeated. But given my background as both a climber and a mountain runner, and just having friends in the climbing world, it just sparked conversation a while ago, like what would these trails be in the United States. um, and so it's something that I've thought about for a while. I worked on it for a second when I was running with Salomon, but it never really took off. And then I was approached by John G, and they said, "Hey, do you want to continue that project?" And I said, "That sounds great." And so we started working on it together. We were Yeah, I was working on it with them for about 3 months, and mind you, when I say that, it's like, I come up with a trail, and they help me get there, and they might help find a photographer. But working on it for a few months, the co-founder of John G, Mike Bernstein, asked if I knew these two other guys, Ian McClellan and Andy Cochran. And I said, "No, who are they?" And he said, "Well, they're both photographers, and they're working on the same project." I'm like,
Darn.
"What?" He's like, "Do you want to talk to them?" I'm like, "Yeah, I guess." And we had a conversation, the three of us, and compared notes, and so many of our ideas and trails overlapped. And we just said, like, "Hey, let's work together on this. The team of three, it'll be stronger as a result." And so I've been working with these two other guys on the project, the three of us equal collaborators, for the past year. And yeah, currently in the process of pitching the book, and trying to find a publisher, and ideally the right publisher. And the goal is to have it on coffee tables. Book making takes a lot longer than most people realize, but ideally, middle of 2027 would be really amazing to have this book on coffee tables around the country and beyond.
Wow. I can't wait to get a copy of it. It's I think that'll be a popular one, no doubt. I mean, just the Lewitt Trail, just so many of the ones that you had, I think you and Janji had posted about already. So ideal, so aesthetic, so perfect. So yeah, no, thank you for doing that. I think the trail running community, I think there's a very positive reaction to having, something like that, just whereas the climbing community has the 50 classic climbs. So pretty cool.
Yeah, it's exciting, and it certainly reinvigorated my desire to keep my running shoes on and to stay fit. Let's see, next in April, I'm heading out to Hawaii to run 2 trails out there. And I'm so excited for it. Like I've been training through the winter time just so I don't get my butt kicked running up and down Haleakala. And so it's stuff like this, just researching, and trails in other places, researching the history, the geology, the human history of those places, has been super fun. It feels like a self-imposed masterclass of a few different items there. And so yeah, it's been really rewarding.
Super cool. So you're a dad now, and you're in your 40s, you're 43. You've lived so many lives in the sport and have done so much and accomplished so much. I'm curious to see the way you think about, like, what's next? Like, do you have any goals still left in the sport to accomplish? Or is there anything you still have on the list to do? Like, how do you think about that?
Well, let's see. There's one race that's always out there because of the format of the race, and that's the Dipsy Trail.
Okay. Yeah.
In California. Another race that I've been the bridesmaid for. I came in second on my first year doing it. But for those that don't know, it's a race that is handicapped by both sex, gender, and age. And so it's oftentimes a 60, 70-year-old woman or an 8-year-old girl that wins the race because of the handicap given to them. So it feels like a fun race to kind of always keep out there on the horizon. Like, okay, like when I'm ready to train for a solid block, I'm going to put my name in the hat there again, and with an 8-minute handicap or a 10-minute handicap, and see how I can fare. But yeah, outside the racing realm, obviously this 50 Classic Trails project is going to be still a couple years in the making. And then I'm halfway through every single street Santa Fe. I'm not being quite as vigorous about this one as I was San Francisco. I did the full 1,300 miles of San Francisco in about 6 weeks. So about 30 to 35 miles a day with 150,000 feet of climbing. This one I'm like 4 or 5 years into it and only like 350 miles in. So I kind of chip away at it a little bit at a time, when I want to mix up my training or mix up my interests. That feels like a project that's going to be kind of lifelong for me, not necessarily Santa Fe, but we have no intention of moving anywhere else. But I think everywhere else I will live in my life, I'll want to do this project in some form or another. And then just the act of running. I've thought about like maybe, when the kids are grown, do I want to go across the country again? Like, I think that would be really cool. A lot of people are inspired by the long trails, Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail. I enjoyed going across the country so much. Like, I don't need to run it next time. But doing it and getting out there and seeing people and meeting new people, seeing new terrain, I think was super fun. So that could be in the future. And then just like, yeah, I don't know, the act of running, of moving by my own power on 2 feet. You learn so much about the earth beneath you, the people around you, and about yourself. So I know that it's going to be a lifelong thing. I think everybody should have something that they do for their entire lifetime. And for me, I'm pretty deep into running. And so who knows what the next 10, 20, 30 years in this sport will look like.
That's a beautiful answer. And it's interesting. I don't know. Interesting to see the way you think about it. So I noticed you have a little bit of a storied history with Pikes Peak, and just because I'm a Colorado Springs guy, and I'm on the board of the Pikes Peak Marathon, I have to ask you, like, do you think you'll ever come back to the Pikes Peak? Do you think we could ever coax you back to come race that race?
Possibly. It's a strange trail race. It's I guess Matt Carpenter's record was beaten this year, just the ascent, but he still had the marathon.
Yeah. So 2 years ago, Remy took the win at the ascent, and I think he lowered it by, might have been a minute, maybe less, somewhere in that range. I should know that. But yeah, the marathon record still stands.
Yeah. So, that his record is there. Like, to me, that's really telling about the kind of race that it is, like that you have to be so specifically trained for that course, for that race. I really loved that race. It's not one that calls me back. I would rather go run up and down the Maroon Bells in Aspen, Colorado.
That's fair.
Or Pyramid Peak, or Capitol Peak. So in terms of a 14er, that one didn't capture me. I'm not full Kilian Jornet when it comes to that race. Like, I'm not going to call it a road race, which I think he has. Or
is that what he said?
Maybe not a road race. He says that it's flat.
It is pretty flat. I mean, even though it's almost 8,000 feet of climbing, it's pretty flat. It's not technical. So I think that's what makes it easier. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, in terms of like my relationship to the mountains, like a certain level of technicality is much more appealing. So yeah, I love that the race exists. I pay attention to results, and I love its history. But it's not a race that ever totally captured my heart.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Hey, I got to ask, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so one more serious question. This was something I actually had on the docket to ask you earlier, and I forgot to ask you. With your transition from Salomon to Janji after being with Salomon for so long, and you don't have to, you can answer this with as much information as you want, but I got to ask you, like, that must have been a very difficult transition to like leave Salomon after so many years and transition to, to go to Janji. Yeah, like what was your thought on that? Like that must have been hard to make that transition.
Yeah, it was hard. It was like nothing's permanent. And I just I just really appreciated my time with Solomon. And yeah, it just felt like, I think for both sides, it felt like a relationship that had run its course. And um, it's strange or appropriate to compare it to like a romantic relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend. And it's like, at a certain point, you're like, are we still doing this? Like, we can go different ways. It's totally fine. Like, it could be better for both of us. And I think, yeah, ultimately it was best for both sides to go different ways and yeah, to freshen things up. So
I like that.
immensely grateful to Solomon for all those years that they invested into the sport, into me. And I made such, like I said earlier, I made such wonderful friendships. Um, but yeah, definitely at the end there when I'm like, okay, like this is it, I'm done. I'm like, oh, wow, like I am probably never going to see like that person, that person, that person. I'll probably never see them again. Like the reality is in my life, like, it's a French company, like, yeah, our paths probably aren't going to cross again. But then there's a few really special relationships that I know I'll see again. So, yeah.
That's a beautiful answer. I mean, hey, I gotta hand it to Janji. Like amazing company. I think that if there's a team to be on now, that's one of the the growing teams. Great apparel. So it's exciting. I really like. I mean, I think Kayla is the athlete manager, I believe, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think what they're doing there is amazing. So it's exciting to see them grow and just build out their team with Corey and everybody that they have on there. So very exciting to follow along on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm honored to be a part of the team.
Yeah. All right. So as we wind down now with questions, I'm just very curious to see who inspires you.
I mean, we've been talking about him a bit, but yeah, Killian inspires me. I just when I met him at this point, like 14 years ago, and even 10 years ago, 5 years, like I think he's going in the direction in our sport of kind of like the Reinhold Messner, like he's genuinely constantly pushing boundaries and thinking about the sport philosophically and writing about it and constantly being engaged. And his world keeps getting a little bit smaller as his projects get bigger. So I think that he's super inspiring. Um, let's see, Dakota Jones, just good buddy, uh, with a huge heart, and that he, started this nonprofit Footprints Running. I think is really cool. That he, yeah, puts a lot of effort into marrying a couple different passions, environmental protection, the youth, science, and running. Um, let's see, other inspiration. Yeah, I look outside the sport quite a bit towards artists and um, yeah, just there's some yeah, there's a lot of weirdos out there, where I'm like, wow, yeah, I love that. And then yeah, now I'm looking at the refrigerator and I see my two kids up there, and just watching my two kids grow up is I just love seeing how they like my daughter doesn't know that she's 3 years old. She doesn't know that I'm a runner. She doesn't know anything about, that part of my life. I'm just dad. I'm just papa. Um, but when she decides our daycare is like, I don't know, a quarter mile from here. And the other day she ran all the way home and I kind of like walked swiftly behind her. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, where do you even like, is it how, like, to me, it's like, it makes me wonder, like, what's fun about running? And to me, that like it's encapsulated right there, watching a 3-year old running home and giggling the entire time. So yeah. So there's a few people right there.
That's amazing. When you're getting ready for a race or something difficult, training run, whatever, what music are you listening to? If you have music in your ears, like what's your favorite song these days?
Let's see. Um, I have yeah, I'm like a pretty serious Spotify guy, which I find that a lot of people that are on Spotify actually don't even know what they're listening to, and I'm definitely in that category. So I can't even tell you the names of things, but I can tell you I listen to my liked songs playlist, and one of the songs that I don't like is from the movie Shaun the Sheep. And we threw that on there because my daughter likes it. Um, so yeah, I tend not to listen to music too much when I'm running. Not opposed to it. I think if it helps people and it has helped me in the past, then that's wonderful. But yeah, I can't come up with a solid answer for that.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. So last question. I usually make this one a goofy one. I'm trying to think of like which way I want to go with this because it's I'd say let's go with what's your take on Bigfoot, man? Were you ever a believer? Do you believe in Bigfoot? Have you ever had any weird experiences in the woods? Like, I'm just so curious. Especially because you went across the country and like slept out most of it. Like, if anyone's gonna have a weird encounter, it's got to be you, right?
Yeah. I believe in some weird stuff, but Bigfoot is not one of them. But I think it is really exciting for people to believe in them. And I also think that it's exciting for people to want other people to believe in them. So the pranksters out there, I think it's good for them. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a guy on the Pikes Peak Highway that dresses up in a gorilla suit every year, just once, and just walks across in front of a car just to keep it alive. Like just to
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some poor family sees that and like, what is this? Like,
Yeah.
So, well, Rickey, thank you so much for your time. It was an honor and a pleasure getting to talk to you. I hope this is not our last conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And yeah, man, I wish you the best of luck in on your 50 classic trail pursuits.
Thanks a lot, James. If I can put one plug in,
yes,
I've got a rad bus trip in the middle of the summertime. Bus Run Bus. We were talking about some of my running trips. I hope people will consider it. Our first stop is at Western States 100 for the finish line, watching the winners of the men's and women's races. We start in San Francisco and end in Seattle, June 28th to July 5th, busrunbus.com. So yeah, I've got a few different running trips. That's one that feels like artwork in motion to me. Road tripping and running in beautiful places, full of in a bus full of stinky runners. Amazing. So, yeah, if anybody wants to get out there and share the trails this summer, I'll be in San Francisco on June 28th. getting on a big converted coach bus
to go up to where's it at? Where's the track at? The name escapes
me.
Auburn, California. There we go. Yeah, no, I'll definitely link that in the show notes. So anybody interested can reach out to you. Obviously on bustrunbus.com or rickeygates.com or your social media as well. Rickey, thank you so much. I appreciate it, man. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And I can't wait for the world to hear this.
Thanks, James. Appreciate it. Take care.
Yeah, you too.
What'd you guys think? Oh man, what an amazing episode. I really want to thank Rickey so much for coming on the podcast. Like, just like I said, like, getting to meet your heroes in the sport, and Rickey just lived up to everything I thought he would be. Just as such an incredibly interesting human. And, you meet so many people in the sport that are like more fit into like the athlete box, and like Rickey fits into multiple boxes. Like, the guy is an artist. He refers to himself kind of as the conceptual runner, which I think fits his description so perfectly. He is also an athlete though, like of the highest caliber. Rickey's kind of done it all in the sub ultra scene and accomplished so much over the years. He told some amazing stories there with Killian that was just like kind of mind blowing. Like kind of someone that's just lived some amazing lives in the sport, and I'm so excited for what this act of his career brings. So guys, before you get going, hop on Instagram and give Rickey a follow. If you don't already, you can find him at Rickey Gates. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Definitely, I'm sure there's a lot of good value on Instagram there from some of the projects that he's working on and the things that he's doing. So definitely highly worth a follow. Pretty amazing. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. That would mean the absolute world to me, so we can continue to tell these great stories for these athletes. One of the big things for me is if you enjoyed an episode or why you enjoyed an episode, if you wouldn't mind just like writing that in, especially Apple, if you wouldn't mind like writing that in the review of why you enjoyed the episode or what you enjoyed about the podcast, that would mean a lot. Very, very last but not least, just some housekeeping stuff, guys. Saturday, March 29th. If you guys are on the Front Range of Colorado, so Boulder all the way south to Colorado Springs, on the March 29th at 8 a.m., we are going to be doing our 1-year birthday bash for the Steep Stuff podcast. We're going to be kicking it off with a group run. We're going to have refreshments sponsored by Ultimate Direction. They're going to be bringing refreshments, free gear to give away, as well as some gear demos. You guys are going to get to see the new Ultra and Race Fest that we just dropped last week. And then we've got some special things that we're also going to be talking about. Miss Bailey Kowalczyk is going to be there as our guest of honor for the live podcast that we're going to be doing from Colorado Running Company. So we hope to do that in front of a large audience. We hope you guys can make it there to get to meet Bailey. There's going to be a lot of elite athletes there. There's going to be a lot of just folks from the community there. So it's going to be a really fun opportunity in time for everyone to just be there and have a nice community gathering. And then also, this is like hot off the press, Nike Trail is going to be there to demo some shoes as well. I'm not particularly sure which 2 models, but I do know there will be 2 models there to demo, which is going to be awesome. So that's going to be our 1-year anniversary. We hope you guys can make it if you happen to be in the area. That would mean the world to me. Hope to meet all of you face to face, and just thank you guys for the love and support for the podcast over the last year. And then very, very last but not least, Ultimate Direction did just drop 2 new vests, the Race 6-liter and the Ultra 12-liter in 2 beautifully aesthetic color wheels. The white and blue is beautiful, as well as this new onyx and green color. These are super dynamic vests, completely different from anything that we've released before from a vest perspective. I think it's going to be an exciting thing for you. They're at a very affordable price point as well. And if you're looking for 25% off of those vests, use code SteepStuffPod. You won't be disappointed. Highly recommend. I think these are going to be some of the hottest new products of 2025, especially going into the racing season. So, guys, I got lots for you this week. Hope you have a great week, and thanks so much for tuning in.